Hello friends, a very warm welcome to my channel. This video is going to be very unique as we are going to talk about the fundamental analysis of construction or specifically infrastructure companies. We are not going to discuss everything in detail, the common aspects of it. We will discuss what are the key things you should look at when you are doing the analysis of an infrastructure company. How this industry performs, what are the peculiar things what happen in this industry, and what should you as investors be cautious of when you are investing in a infrastructure company. So if you're new to the channel, please do subscribe and hit the bell icon, and if you have not a part of a Telegram channel yet, do join today by searching my name there, because we discuss daily market analysis, results of companies, lot of new things on our Telegram channel every day. So let's begin. To begin with, we'll first talk about a few things about the infrastructure or construction industry, how this industry works and how is this industry different from the other businesses. So when you observe the infrastructure or a construction business is easy to start because people can start from a smaller size and gradually scale up. This doesn't require much of regulatory approvals or doesn't have any patented technology. So there are not much entry barriers in this business, and that is why there are n number of companies working in India in these businesses. Although there are hundreds or thousands of companies doing this, but everybody is not of the same league. So depending on the size of company, there are different segments in the market. So each segment has a capacity to take up a size of a project. For example, an L&T or a Shapoorji Pallonji can take up huge projects worth thousands of crores and which take years to complete. So the key projects of India, like building an assembly or building a flyover, so these kind of bigger projects are given to such reliable companies which have the capacity to do it in time and at the desired quality. Whereas the smaller projects get distributed among the smaller companies. So the size or scale itself in this industry is an advantage to a company because they get eligible to participate in larger projects, and when they do that business, they have that economies of scale. They can borrow capital at lower rates, they can buy their raw material at lower rates. So these kind of economies develop and these companies become more operationally efficient as they scale up. So the bigger companies have advantage in this industry in terms of the revenue as the projects what they get, and in terms of cost also, as they can bargain and buy things at a lower cost than a smaller company. So generally what happens is that as you grow beyond a level, then you have an edge over the smaller companies and the big keep getting bigger in this industry. Generally what happens is the companies try to diversify their businesses into different segments in this industry. Diversification can be in terms of different geographies, because if the entire business of a company is in a particular state or city and if there is a lockdown or any slowdown or the government doesn't want to do much of capex in that particular state, the business of the company drastically gets impacted. So geographically the companies want to diversify. They've want to diversify in terms of the type of projects they take up, like the government projects and private projects. Then inside that, it's a commercial project or a residential project, whether it's a railways project or it's a residential project. So like that, they want to diversify internally in what type of projects they want to take up to reduce their risk. Generally, when you're working in this industry, somebody who wants to construct something invites tenders from different businesses, and these businesses submit their tenders and they tend to bid for a particular project. So in this bidding process, generally the award is given to the lowest bidder or at least one among the lowest bidder if they want to differentiate in terms of the service reputation and the quality. So that is how this industry operates, and based on the past reputation and track record of a particular construction company as to whether they have completed the earlier projects in time, whether they have completed the earlier projects to the satisfaction in terms of quality and design of the person who has allotted that project. So based on this track record, the reputation and trust in this industry gets built, because huge money is involved in these projects, and it is very important for a company to trust another company with these kind of stakes involved. The business also gets impacted by the government policies. Every year in the budget, the government decides how much should be the capex spend. Then that total spend is divided into different sectors and states. So like this, if the government policy changes every year, whether it increases or decreases the allocation towards a particular sector, then this industry's business also gets drastically impacted. Another thing is there is an element of cyclicality in this business. If the economy is doing well, everybody is doing well, the government is intending to spend more money for the growth of the country, then the sector is in an up cycle and they do well for the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years. But if there is a slowdown occurring in the industry, people tend to spend less on infrastructure, even the individuals buy lesser homes, the government spends less. So what happens is there is a slowdown in the industry, and that continues again for a period of 2 to 4 years. So it is a kind of a cyclical industry which you have to understand, and you can't stay invested forever in a company unless the company is showing steady growth. So wherever you notice a slowdown when you're invested in a company of this sector, it is always better you exit and re-enter when that slowdown is visibly going to end. Another peculiar thing in this industry is you have to closely look at the corporate governance or the integrity of the management in this company, because there are different ways in which things can be played around. Sometimes a lot of cash is also involved in the transactions. So the most important thing in this industry, as per me, is the genuineness and integrity of the management. Because if that is there, then only you will be rewarded as shareholders. Otherwise, just on paper, they'll be making money, and overall the business will remain range bound over a long period of time. Another point to note here is not every company has a huge team, has a huge plant and machinery to complete a project. There is a trend of subcontracting the projects with the company's take. So you have to understand whether the company which you are investing in is doing the projects on their own, or merely they are just taking the projects, bidding for it, winning it, and subcontracting to the other companies. In subcontracting, what happens? Your investment as a company gets reduced because the subcontractor invests his assets to complete that project. But at the same time, your margin also goes down because you have to share your profits with that subcontractor. Generally, as there is huge competition in this industry, the margins are not very lucrative for any business, and majority of the cases what happens is the companies earn higher margins where they have better cost efficiencies, and that comes with scale, as we have discussed. As the projects involve a lot of investment, generally the infrastructure companies have a lot of debt, and debt comes in various forms in this industry, which we'll discuss in the coming slides. So broadly, to begin with, in this video, I've given you an overview of how this industry operates and how this works differently than the other industries which you have been investing in. Now, when you're analyzing a particular company in this industry, the fundamentals of the company, there are a few things which you should be very careful about. Revenue reporting in this industry is not as simple as some other manufacturing company where you manufacture a product, you get it billed and dispatched, and the revenue comes into the P&L account. It's not as simple as that. Here it happens based on the percentage of completion method. Now, percentage of completion is again subjective. The person who's doing the project may feel that my project is 50% complete. The client may feel that the project is 30% complete. So this involves a lot of debate and confusion in this industry as to how much revenue should be recognized. So you should see carefully over a period of time how has been this company which you are analyzing been recognizing revenue. Either they are conservative or they are being over ambitious, recording the revenue upfront just to inflate their P&L. And when it comes to the cost apportionment also, there may be material which is purchased at once, but depending on the completion of the project, you have to book that cost in the P&L. So how the company has been booking the cost in the P&L, how have they been reporting the margins, all these things have to be closely watched when you're analyzing the financials of a construction company. Generally what happens is, for every big project, the company tries to make a new subsidiary, because they want to make it as a separate cost center and revenue center or a business unit, and calculate the entire financials separately. So when you are investing in this, you have to mainly look at the consolidated financials, as there are n number of subsidiaries which get consolidated in the main financials. Then a lot of transactions happen between the parent company and the subsidiaries. There are a lot of loans exchanged. The parent company invests in the form of equity in the subsidiary companies. So all these things, at least at a broad level, you have to understand how things are working and see whether the management is not just trying to play around with you. When it comes to the collection of payments, generally the payments are made on a milestone basis. The way the project is completed, the revenue is recognized, and based on milestones, the client makes a payment. Now, whatever is the percentage of completion, that may need not match directly with the milestone of the cash payment. So there will be a difference or a time gap. There will be fluctuations in the cash flows of these companies over a long period of time. So as you know, these companies need a lot of debt or leverage to complete their projects, because they don't fund the entire 100% of the project internally through their accruals. And the debt generally they take is more of a working capital loan. They don't take more of a long-term loan because they don't need much of fixed assets. This is more of a labor-intensive industry, and they need material which they want to use for construction every day. So their main money goes into the inventory rather than the fixed assets. So they need more of working capital loans rather than a long-term loan, which is different from other companies where the majority of the fixed assets or the a majority of the capex goes in the fixed assets. Now let's talk about the different ratios which you have to look closely when you're talking about or understanding a infrastructure company. The first ratio we are going to talk about is the order book to sales. Now what is order book? The amount of the quantity of orders in terms of money value which the company has received already is the order book. Now what will you call it as received? There are different interpretations to this. Generally, when the order gets actually awarded, then only you should be recognizing as the order is received. Because if you're just bidding for something, you should not recognize, because you may or may not win a bid. So you have to closely see whether the company which you are analyzing is recognizing the order book only when the order book is getting awarded, or they are being too ambitious and recording some a portion of the order book is for the bidded projects also. And also be careful with the amount of order which is getting recorded, because the person giving the order should be satisfied with that the value of the order, because he's going to be the person who's going to actually pay the money. So the timing of recognition of the order and the value of the order you should see when you rely on any order book. Now, when you compare the order book to sales, what do you interpret? Let's say in FY22, you check the sales of a company and you also check a order book of a company, or FY23, because 23 is also over now. So let's say in FY23, the company does an order book of let's say 2000 crores and they do a revenue of 1000 crores. So it is 2 times the sales. So generally you are on the safer part, because the company has a visibility of doing at least this much revenue for the next 2 years. And during the year also they keep getting new orders. So more or less this revenue will be maintained, or there will be some growth. That is an indication which you get when this ratio is higher. If this ratio is too low, then you should be worrisome, because the company is either not bidding for the projects, or in spite of bidding, they are not winning the projects. So generally on the lower side or the minimum side, you should expect the order book to sales ratio to be between 1.5x to 2x of the sales. Now, just to give you a couple of examples of case studies, this slide is taken from the presentation of KNR Construction. Here you see that they have a order book of about 8,100 crores, and out of this they have given the main projects which form a part of this order book, and they have diversified their business. If you see the segment wise split into roads, irrigation. So like this, the companies try to diversify their business to reduce risk. But when you look at their business, it is totally concentrated on the southern 2-3 states. So this involves a lot of risk, or a regional risk, because there is no diversification in terms of region in this company. The last year FY22, the company has done a turnover of roughly about 4,000 crores, and the order book of 8,100 crores makes this order to book sales ratio of about 2x. So this is what is the good visibility for the near future. Taking another example of PNC Infratech, they have reported an order book of about 17,000 crores, which is about 2.5 times the FY22 revenue. So this is again even above 2 times, which is a good visibility from a client or a investment point of view. The next ratio we are going to talk about is bid to success ratio. Now there are several companies which are bidding for projects, but only one company wins that project. So you have to see how many projects or what is the value of the projects which the companies are bidding for, and how much they are actually winning. So this may be reported by some companies openly, it may not be reported, but generally if you read the earnings call, you will get an indication as to what is the success rate of a company when they are bidding for a project. So if the success rate is good, then you can believe the management more. Otherwise they will just try to show that they are bidding for thousands of crores, and after a quarter or two they will say that they have not won. So you will be fascinated as an investor to invest in that company, and later on when the actual numbers come, the revenue will be down and you will regret investing. So not just bidding is enough, bid to success ratio is also very critical when you are trying to understand the construction or infrastructure space. Another critical thing to note in this bid to success ratio is you have to see whether the companies are bidding for viable projects, or just like that they are bidding for any profit project where they may or may not be making their regular margin. Just for the sake of growth, the company should not be bidding at projects which are not feasible or which are not lucrative in terms of revenue. The next ratio which you should look at is the asset turnover ratio, which you also do in other types of companies. So in this, there are different ways people check, using the gross block or net block. And you also have to see whether the company is into subcontracting, because if they are subcontracting, they don't need much of assets, and the asset turn will appear to be much higher. So you have to check this before you calculate this ratio. And if this ratio is high, that indicates that they are using their assets in a proper way, and if it is low, that means their assets are getting underutilized. For example, in PNC Infratech, again, if you see the FY revenue is about 7,200 crores, the FY 22 revenue, and the fixed assets are somewhere around 1,500 crores. So the asset turn for this company is somewhere around 4.8x, which is considered very good in terms of utilization. One of the most important thing to look at in construction companies or infrastructure companies is the amount of leverage which these companies are taking, because most of the companies in the past where hundreds of companies have failed, they have failed because of the one main reason, which is debt. So in other companies, normally we look at the long term and the short term debt on the balance sheet and we try to understand how much is the leverage position. But in infrastructure companies, other than the long term, short term borrowings which appear on the balance sheet, you should also look at certain other things, because these companies borrow money or take advantage of people's funds in different forms. A lot of times there are huge customer advances in this company, which is also an indication of how much outside money the company is using. So the outside money is not just in the form of borrowings, but it is also in different forms as customer advances. And if they are delaying the payments to creditors for a very long time, that is also one way of using capital. Most of the projects where the companies bid for, they are forced to give bank guarantees. The bank guarantees are given for the assurance of the customer in case this company is unable to complete a project in time or to the satisfaction of the customer in terms of quality, then they have a assurance that the bank will pay that particular customer. So these bank guarantees are contingent liabilities. If at all a project is not done properly, then these contingent liabilities become the actual liabilities and the company has to pay the customer or the bank. So these are the different ways in which you should look at leverage or debt in infrastructure companies. Now coming to the next important thing, which is the cash flows. In cash flows, what happens is, since these are milestone based payments and percentage of completion based revenue recognition, the revenue and cash flows may not match evenly and there may be huge disparities. So what I feel is, looking at a particular year like the last trailing 12 months and judging the cash flows of a company is not fair. You should look at a time period of minimum 5 years to 10 years to understand how much is the amount of projects which the company has completed, how much is the profit the company has earned, and how much are the cash flows which are generated, and how much are the free cash flows. So that is why you should look at as a holistic approach over a long period of time. You have to carefully look at whether the money is getting locked in the receivables or a lot of money is getting locked in the inventory, because by this you can understand whether the project is completed but not to the satisfaction of the customer, and that is why he is not paying you money, it is locked in receivables, and whether the company has done the project but it is unable to sell, and that is why the inventory is getting increased. So in the last 5 years, from FY 18 to 22, the company has made a net profit of about 2,300 crores and the operating cash flow is about 1,000 crores. So even if you take a long period of time, you notice the difference between the profit made and the operating cash flows. And further, if you reduce the amount of fixed assets expenditure, the capex part, you are left over with just about 200 crores of free cash flow. So now you can understand this, although the company is making thousands of crores of profits, there is not much free cash flow generated, and this kind of situation will lead to more borrowings and more leverage for the company to complete the future projects, and there will not be any distribution or dividends to the shareholders. So these are certain very important 5 to 7 aspects we should look at when you're understanding or doing the fundamental analysis of infrastructure companies, which are different from the analysis of other sectors which you do. Just to summarize on a broad basis, look at the average long-term performance. Don't go by the last 1 or 2 years performance of any infrastructure company. Have a skeptical approach, because there are a lot of things which can go wrong in such companies. So every item in your financials is important. Give some importance to that and look at that very carefully. Working capital management is very important. Rather than more concentrating on the fixed assets, look at the current assets and liabilities in these kind of companies. Look at how the company is executing their projects, and as we have discussed, the bigger companies become bigger in this space. So always choose a strong company to invest in and don't go for newcomers, because there are a lot of new companies which are started and closed, n number of companies in this industry every year in India. And the most important thing is you should look at the debt position in different ways, as we have discussed, because this is one important thing which will lead to the collapse of a company. So this is about the analysis of infrastructure companies. I hope this video is going to be useful for you now and in future, and you can every time come back and take a reference when you're trying to do the fundamental analysis of infra companies. If you like the concepts which we have discussed in this video, do share it with your friends and like it. And if you want me to create more such fundamental analysis videos which can make you better investors for other industries as well, do mention the name of that industry in the comments below. I will make a video on that industry in the coming times. So thank you for watching and have a wonderful day.